see things what you get to see. But not only did he see some things, saw heaven open, amen. He saw some things, but he also heard a heavenly voice. He heard the Lord's voice. Well, there ain't nothing no sweeter than hearing the Lord, amen. He said, well, I love to hear the Lord. Well, pray more. Amen.
Go ahead.
Pray. So I sure would like to see something. Well, pray, amen. Pray. So we see that there was a perception that was brought in prayer. Prayer not only brought perception, but it brought proclamation. No longer was Peter worried about what Peter wanted to do, but now he's concerned about what God wanted him to do. That ought to be important. Amen. That ought to be moved to the forefront. Amen. We ought to move ourselves to the side and say, God, what would you have me to do? Is that not what Paul asked? He said, so what do you want me to do? When the Lord speaks, amen, listen. Do y'all hear your wife, or do you listen to your wife? There is a difference. Listen, my wife, she sings for us all the time, and she said, I'm going to be singing. I said, well, I'm not listening. I'll be in my study. Well, she don't want me to. I said, oh, don't worry. I said, I'll hear it, but I ain't listening. Y'all ever heard a song, and you heard it 3 or 4 times, and then you listen to it, and you start sinking in. You get the hold of it. We need to get a hold of what God is saying. Amen. Let it sink within not only our minds, but then in our heart. When it gets in our heart, we'll do what he says. And so we find that Peter responded when God started speaking. He said, now, this is something that's hard for me to understand, and we all do. He said, not so, Lord. Not so, Lord. That should never be said. As a child of God, should never be said. But we find the perfecting, the correction. Amen. The Lord corrected him. Amen. He corrected, and he'll correct us. We find the doubting and nothing in the plans of God. There was a plan. God wanted to save a family. There was a man called Cornelius, a good man, but he needed saving. Amen. And Peter was the vessel God wanted to use. But God had to help Peter along, amen. Peter probably stayed on the housetop. If the Lord hadn't have told him, he said, get down and go. Go with these men. Now listen, lastly I want to mention something. In our preaching. Now men, there ain't nothing worse than hearing a preacher get up and preach with a question mark. Amen. Now you may not have heard what I have. I'll give you a little story. I was at the nursing home. I used to love it. I still would. They started opening up. I'll get back in. I was at the nursing home. But basically, there was a man coming in, and he was bringing supplies, young man, probably 18, 20 years old. And I noticed him while I was preaching. He came in, and he stopped, and he just sat down. And when he sat down, you could tell he was intently listening. And when I got through preaching, he come over and he shook my hand and he said, preacher, he said, I've never heard preaching like that. I'm thinking, now listen, son, I ain't nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, what do you mean? He said, I've never heard a preacher preach like that. And I thought he meant loud. He wasn't talking about loud. He was talking about believing. He said, you preach like you really believe that. I said, dear God, I do. I do, amen. Preaching not with a question mark, with an exclamation. Amen. Proclaiming, thus saith the Lord. God said it, amen. Listen, I get myself off the hook all the time and say, don't get mad at me. That's what God said. Get mad at him if you want to. it ain't gonna work out well. Doubting nothing. Listen, we can do all things through Christ. Amen. But we can do nothing without Him. I encourage you this morning. Doubt nothing with the Lord. In your prayer, in His plans, and in your preaching.